What is going on, all you wonderful A-Plusers out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again to give you guys another Stargirl review. This time, of course, we're going to be talking about Season 2, Episode number 6, of course, titled Summer School, Chapter 6. A big shock there. But, guys, what isn't a big shock is that we got another really good episode here, although this one might, of course, be probably my new favorite episode, not just of the season, but of Stargirl altogether. And I know I said that about 2 episodes earlier with episode number 4, but, guys, just hear me out on this one because, wow, so much happens in this episode, and I'm really excited to break it all down for you guys, starting with the very beginning of the episode, where we got kind of a little bit of a montage of the, basically the children of the ISA kind of just giving a little bit of a hint to the Justice Society that, you know, shit is about to hit the fan. So we start with Yolanda still working as a waitress and having to deal with some asshole customers, and one of those asshole customers ends up being Isac, of course, you know, the son of the fiddler. So Isac basically kind of starts by just being a jerk and insulting her about the photos that, you know, got leaked everywhere last year, and, you know, the one that basically kind of ruined her whole, like, kind of high school life, because, you know, before that happened, she was kind of like one of the more popular girls, but now, of course, she's kind of ridiculed by everyone at the school, and all because of these photos that, like, got sent around. So he brings those up, and of course she's, like, very upset, and then he follows it up by, you know, basically blaming her and the rest of the JSA for his mom's death, even though we kind of know that's not actually true. The only one who is to really blame for her death were Artemis's parents, because they were the ones that killed her. And I was kind of hoping that was going to get revealed by the end of the episode, but one small spoiler, sadly that never comes up in the episode. But then we do cut to Artemis and Beth, and of course Artemis, she is threatening her, basically saying, you know, that she and, you know, Beth and the rest of her friends are responsible for her parents being in prison, which, I mean, to be fair, that part is actually very accurate. However, you know, their parents should be in prison regardless because they were complete crazy psychopaths. But, you know, we then cut to, of course, Courtney and Pat at the school as they're basically looking through the art room after it was completely trashed by the Black Diamond, and they're looking for any clues as to where they might find the Black Diamond, and while doing so, they end up coming across a painting of Cindy, and that's when they kind of realize that she's the one who has had the Black Diamond this whole time. Now, you know, at first you're kind of wondering if this was done on purpose by Sydney, or if maybe Eclipso just did this, but by the end of the episode, you definitely will have your answer. So we cut back to Mike, who of course is still trying to make himself useful, but currently Pat doesn't really want him working on, you know, what he was kind of considering doing, which is making like a vehicle that's very rigged, very much Mad Max like in a sense, like a vehicle with weapons on it, I guess. But of course, you know, Pat isn't quite comfortable with that, so we asked Mike to, you know, start with something small and then kind of build his way up. And so you have like the car mechanic in a joking way, kind of like encouraging him to kind of not necessarily disobey his dad, but definitely just take what he says literally. So, like, for example, the mechanic goes, yeah, I'm going to be working on a chainsaw that doesn't have wheels on it, and, you know, to be fair, that is all kind of Pat told Mike, is to just, you know, not to work on anything with wheels on it. So Mike goes to kind of like look for something that he could probably use to improve Stripe's outfit, but what he finds is a big drill, which of course I would actually love to see that, like putting a big drill onto the Stripe robot suit, like that would be pretty cool. But it's here when he finds out that Cindy is there, and you know, we finally find out what it was that she wanted with Mike this whole time. Like, this whole time we were kind of led to believe that she was going to convince Mike to join the Injustice Society, and I kept thinking, like, it could have worked at the very beginning of the season, but then as the episodes went on, it just kind of became harder for me to kind of see that something like that happening, unless maybe it was the influence of the Black Diamond that convinced him to join. But no, it turns out that she actually had no interest in him, like, actually joining the team. Really, all he was there for is just to be bait, which, I don't know, to me, it definitely does kind of fix one of the issues I had with how they were kind of building up this mystery for Mike turning out to, like, not actually be part of the ISA. But at the same time, it really felt like kind of just the writers kind of changed their mind in this episode, as if they thought, you know, it really wouldn't make sense for Mike to join the Injustice Society, so let's just have him, you know, just be the bait or something. I don't know. To me, it really didn't feel like it felt very much like a little bit disappointing, just because it felt like that's not where they were originally going, and it felt like the writers just kind of changed their minds. But regardless though, at the very least, it does kind of fix the other issue that I did have, which is the lack of there really being mystery behind it. So in the very next scene, we do have Pat Dugan being attacked by both Isac and Artemis, and of course, it's kind of a mixture of him just not having that much skills on his own, and the fact that he's trying to take down Artemis without actually hurting her. But he basically gets his ass handed to him and ends up in the emergency room. And the only reason they don't kill him right there is because Artemis does bring up the fact that he is good friends with her dad, even if that friendship is extremely one-sided. But regardless, the real reason they were there at the car shop was to just destroy the giant robot suit that Pat had spent all that time building. So Stripes is pretty much down, it looks like, for the rest of the season. Now, we could probably see him in the season finale, but I do actually like the idea of Stripes' outfit being destroyed for a couple reasons. I think that on the one hand, it means that now the main characters and the writers don't have to worry about fans basically kind of constantly being like, well, why don't they just use the giant robot? That would fix all their problems. Because the giant robot is kind of the most OP thing in the Justice Society. So without them being able to rely on it, it actually opens up a lot more challenges for our main characters. So I'm actually all for the suit being destroyed, at least temporarily. I do hope we see it again in the season finale, but for now, I'm actually okay with not seeing it for a little bit. But yeah, unfortunately, Pat is in the hospital with a concussion, and Brett, there's a brief moment where Courtney kind of blames herself for the two of them splitting up, but then of course her mom does reassure her that it wasn't her fault at all, and if Pat was awake, he would definitely want her to keep fighting. And it's right then and there where we get a phone call by Sydney, basically telling her that she has Mike and she's gonna kill him if she doesn't meet her and the rest of the Injustice Society at the school. And we have Courtney, of course, going to face him off, but before she does, you have Courtney's mom calling up the Shade and basically letting him know that Sydney is the one with the black diamond, which, the entire time we as the audience, along with Courtney's mom, are wondering whether or not this is a good move on their part. It's definitely a risk regardless, because they know that the Shade isn't exactly a good guy, but he does genuinely seem like he's serious when he says he wants to put an end to Eclipso once and for all. So I personally probably would have done the same thing, if I'm being honest, if I was in Courtney's mother's shoes. I don't know why I forgot her mother's name, but regardless, the Shade is now involved. But when we get to the school, we do see that it's basically the Justice Society versus the Injustice Society, and what follows is some of the best fight choreographies that we've seen in Stargirl. And keep in mind, that's actually saying a lot, because you look at Stargirl Season 1, this episode definitely reminds me a lot of Season 1. I believe, I want to say it was actually the 6th episode of Season 1, where you first had the big fight between the Justice Society and the Injustice Society, and we get a very similar style fight scene in this episode, except for here it's actually better to my opinion, because now it's no longer just one-sided, because before, with the previous fight between the Justice Society and the Injustice Society, you had the veteran members that actually have a lot more skill and actually know how to fight, whereas the Justice Society themselves, while they had cool equipment and everything, they didn't exactly know how to use it. They weren't exactly well trained, so they ended up getting their asses handed to them. But here, both sides are kind of just equally trained, so the fights are very even in this sense. So it's not one-sided anymore, making the whole fights, all of them, just that much more interesting to watch. If I'm nitpicking at this, I do think it's a bit weird how powerful Isac is with the violin, only because they knock him down several times, and rather than taking the violin from him while he's knocked down, they pretty much just stand over him, giving him plenty of time to get back up and then start using it again. So that's probably the one thing I could nitpick about this, but it's besides that, everything else about this fight is absolutely amazing. And one of my favorite things about it, unfortunately I didn't didn't get shots of this for the images on the corner, but one thing that they do in this is they have a lot of match cuts. So you'll have a lot of scenes where like one character is like being slammed into the ground, and then we cut to another character who's already slammed to the ground, and the fight will continue from there. Like the way they match a lot of the shots is just absolutely fantastic, and I can only imagine that this episode had to taken like a while to film, because a fight scene like this isn't exactly something you can film like over one night or anything like that. My favorite fights though definitely have to go to Hourman and Artemis. I think like the choreography between both of them is absolutely amazing. And again, you know, if I have to nitpick about it, it's the fact that you know, Artemis has to have like some sort of enhanced human strength, because the way like Hourman just would toss her around, no human being could possibly survive a lot of the stuff that like he does to her. So I just, you gotta assume that, you know, one of her things is that she's on major steroids or something like that. Otherwise, her going toe to toe with Hourman the way that she does, and then same with the way we see with her parents, I feel like the only way their abilities make sense is if you assume they're on some sort of science fiction steroids. But regardless, the last fight, of course, we get is between Sydney and Courtney. Now, during all of this, you know, one thing I've been kind of bringing up about every time they go out, like, suited up, is how they're always bringing, you know, Beth with them, which I always found kind of funny, because, you know, I feel like the original Dr. Midnight at least knew how to fight, whereas like seemingly we don't really see Beth doing much fighting training or anything like that, so most of the time she's just kind of there. But here in this fight, they actually find a way to make her useful by using her goggles against the enemies to kind of distract them, and also being able to use them to track down Mike, and which ends up being a big help, because Mike ends up helping Courtney fight against Sydney by like basically smacking her over the head with a toaster. A toaster that I think was used in a previous episode, if I'm not mistaken, because we see claw marks in it, which I believe are caused by Yolanda. I just can't quite remember which episode that was from. But regardless, basically the ISA eventually do get their asses kicked, and so Sydney just decides, screw it, I'm just gonna use the Black Diamond, which is what, you know, she kind of has like that whole, I should have just done this from the beginning. But of course, using the Black Diamond causes it to gain more power over her, so he's able to temporarily control her, and that's when we get the Shade coming in trying to get the Black Diamond from her. But of course it's a bit too late, and Eclipso takes full control over Sydney using his powers against the Shade, and it's like an even kind of like beam struggle in a way, but with like, you know, shadowy like clouds and beams of like shadowy darkness, I guess you could say, but very anime like in the sense of it being a beam kind of struggle. But then we have Courtney knowing that the staff is the one thing that can actually fight against Eclipso. She uses the staff, but unfortunately she decides to break the diamond with it, which is what ends up freeing him. Unfortunately, destroying the diamond does not destroy Eclipso. It's quite the opposite. He ends up being freed from the diamond, and wow, guys, Eclipso in this episode, design wise, absolutely fantastic. Some of the best makeup work that I've seen, like on Star, not just Stargirl, but like on almost any cable network television show. Like even the whatchamacallits, the White Walkers from Game of Thrones, like even they got nothing on this. Like the makeup for him, and then also just the way it was shot in general. Now we have seen like promo photos of what Eclipso was going to look like, and all those promo photos, I think they looked really good, don't get me wrong, but they show him in a lot of light, and I think that he really shines when he's like in the darkness. That's when I feel like the makeup, it looks absolutely incredible. And you know, I gotta admit something, man, this guy is freaking terrifying to look at, and not to mention just the performance that he gives. I think like just kind of a mixture of the directing of the episode, the great makeup, and then the amazing performance that the actor gives for Eclipso. Eclipso is just a very terrifying villain, and I think that's like perfect for, you know, when you're having him fight against a bunch of like kind of teenage superheroes. Yeah, throwing in a little bit of terror was definitely a wise move for the writers, because now it gives our heroes like an excuse to kind of be like kids, like be terrified like kids would be of a creature like this. And here we get to see him like at his full, like, just, you know, we get to see how much of an evil person he really is, just because he immediately devours on Isac, you know, referring to him as an evil child before like completely sucking him up. And then of course, you know, bringing Sydney into like the shadowy dimension, which I believe is where Dr. Midnight is currently at. So, you know, we could potentially be seeing Sydney and Dr. Midnight having to work together later on in order to escape this realm. And, you know, whether or not it changes her into a better person, I guess we'll have to wait and find out for that. But in the meantime, we get Eclipso basically doing something to the shade, but it's hard to really know what. Like, he definitely jams his fingers into the shade's like stomach, seemingly causing the shade or to like be, or to at least come close to death, I guess. But we don't really get too much closure on that because he immediately disappears there. And then we got Courtney using, you know, the cosmic staff against Eclipso, which of course, like I mentioned earlier, is the one thing that can kind of fight against Eclipso's power. But unfortunately, it barely does anything to him. It does a little bit of damage, but even with that, it still sucks out the entire power within the cosmic staff, essentially. So showing that like it takes literally all of the cosmic staff's power just to even do a little bit of damage to Eclipso, which really kind of shows you how terrifying this guy is. We do cut back to the shade and we see that one of the things that he's done to him, whatever it is that he's done, it's caused it so now the shade has a hard time staying in his like physical form, as he constantly is turning back into nothing but shadows, essentially. We then cut to the emergency room where Pat is at, and the family kind of just, you know, goes over everything pretty much. And one of the biggest things that Mike brings up is that, you know, if for nothing else, you know, I need to learn how to fight so I can at least defend myself. So of course Pat like offers to help him work on stripes, but then that's when Mike is like, no, I need my own stripes, which I feel like is setting it up for maybe not this season but for next season, because if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that Mike does end up like taking over with the stripes robot suit, and I'm not sure if that's going to happen anytime soon, but I do hope we get it like within like the show's runtime. So maybe if not this season, it would be kind of cool to see it in the next season or two, for sure. But then we get one last glimpse at Eclipso, and we see him turn back into the child that we see at the very beginning of the season, whose name I believe was Bruce Gordon, if I'm not mistaken. And he turns back into the child, and then kind of like you get this hint that he might be trying to influence more people to do bad things, so he has an excuse to suck their souls from them. One interesting piece of dialogue that also came up in the episode was after he took down Isac, Yolanda brought up the fact that Isac was a troubled kid, but he wasn't evil. He didn't deserve to die. And what I kind of wonder about Eclipso's power, because we see him, you know, doing the same thing to a little girl who literally just like, you know, she took a present from another child because he convinced her to do so, which really isn't that evil in the grand scheme of things at all. And, you know, he ends up killing the little child for that. So I'm wondering if it's like he doesn't exactly feed off of evil, but he feeds off of guilt, but he calls that guilt evil, and that's why, you know, it kind of gives you that illusion that he feeds off of evil. That's kind of my thought about Eclipso. I don't think he's really after evil or he feeds off of that. I think he just feeds off of guilt, and that's something I would love to see kind of play out later in the show if that turns out to be accurate or not. But guys, overall this was a fantastic episode. Some of the best fights in Stargirl altogether. Like the fight scenes in this episode were absolutely incredible. Like no lie, those alone are what really sold me on this episode. But not only do you have great fight scenes, but you got some really cool horror elements, like I've kind of mentioned about the season like before, and you really get to see that play out at the very end of the episode. The horror elements around Eclipso are just absolutely amazing. His design and just the way it's overall filmed. And again, the big thing that I thought was really cool about this was really the payoff that we got with the Injustice Society, something that had been built up throughout the beginning of the season, and even like they've kind of hinted at towards the beginning of season 1 too. So seeing it all kind of come together with the ISA versus the JSA and have it be like such an amazing fight scene all together, and giving every character something to do, including Dr. Midnight, who, you know, is definitely the least skilled out of the members of the JSA. I absolutely loved it. This episode just had so much going for it. And I think if I really had any kind of nitpicks about it, and it would really just go to, I do wish they had more for Pat to do before he was decommissioned, but that's a nitpick again. And there were like tiny nitpicks you could do about the fight choreography, but given how much like amazing things we get to see in it, those nitpicks really just don't matter in the grand scheme of things. What we got from this episode is just something so fantastic that I can't wait to watch the episode again. I think the last thing I will say is that if you do watch this episode, I recommend doing it with your brightness settings at normal. And I say that because that's what I was doing when I was watching it last night on my 4K television screen. The brightness settings were kind of on default, I guess, and that's why Eclipso looked absolutely amazing. But then earlier today when I was rewatching the episode for the review, I was doing it on this computer that I'm recording the episode on, and I feel like because I usually keep the brightness on my computer monitors like really high up, to me the visuals that you got at the very end weren't quite as terrifying as they were when I was watching it on the television screen. So I definitely recommend normal brightness settings when you're watching this episode. Otherwise, I do feel like kind of the horror elements really do get taken away at the very end. So with that all being said, guys, I don't know what else to say about this episode. Fantastic. Definitely check this out. Probably the first episode of the season where I would just straight up give it a 10 out of 10 because like just everything that works so well about this episode is just so strong that any nitpicks you could possibly throw at it just really don't matter at all, honestly. But yeah, guys, those are my overall thoughts on the episode. But of course, at the end of the day, those are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions always want to know what you guys think, so definitely let me know in the comments below if you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Don't forget to hit that like button to subscribe to our channel, but of course, guys, above all, don't forget to keep it A+. I'll talk to you all next week.
If you enjoy our content and want to be a part of helping our channel grow, become a patron supporter. We have affordable tiers to choose from that offer a variety of exclusive and early access content, from audio files for all of our shows for you to enjoy on the road, access to our Discord community, and plenty of reactions, reviews, character breakdowns, and more. Check us out at patreon.com/A+opinions. And as always, remember, like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so anytime we drop a brand new video, you will be notified.